Alrighty, haven't talked to you guys in a bit. Let's open. Let's see, we go to recent. Let's go to Stuart Foley 105B. So this is basically, I've done some drawing in between. I've colored in the dome, as you can see, and kind of cleaned up the saucer, sharpened the edge a little bit on here. I've been watching some videos about UV unwrapping and texturing. I've been learning a little bit about texturing. I'm kind of weak there, so I can try to put some, make some UV maps for this thing and map it, so I can get onto the. I need to finish this up and/or get it pretty close to being finished, and then I need to get onto the. Spit it out, Douglas. I need to get onto the second ship, the ship that they're actually going to use. This is like the reject model. But I actually like the way it came out. I tried to make it look a lot like the Constitution class. I wanted it to look more original series Star Trek. And in a sense, that's why, kind of in the storyline, like why it's being rejected as the ship that they're going to use for the Stuart Foley class, because the Stuart Foley class, go out of here, Windows, the Stuart Foley class, let's look that down, this is going to be the Stuart Foley class. I think I've already showed you this, guys. I think I already showed you this before. This is going to be the final ship, and as you can tell, it kind of has a little bit of the original series flavor, but actually is starting to have the more of the refit flavor. It has the original engines, but we have this. I could have opened it. Let's open it this way. Let's open it. Let's open it with Windows instead of. There we go. I can zoom it up and stuff. Excuse me, I got a cold from hell. Anyway, it has this on top of the. It has the shuttle bays at both ends. It's more or less the original hull, original Enterprise hull shape. But as you can see, we've added in a few phaser banks here and here, and there's a few phaser banks up here, and there's photon torpedo launchers on both ends out of here. It has a much larger, I guess you call it neck, or saucer support pylon up here in the original. This pylon here, this engine support pylon, ends up kind of being, it looks like it's thicker, and it has, it's like a support neck, so it has decks in here, along with being a support pylon. These support pylons are quite thicker, but they do look like they are more of a pylon, but they're thicker to hold these out. And the engine room is below this hangar deck level down here, so that's why these pylons are coming out from the bottom, and they're more or less streamlined in with the design. As you can see, the saucer, I'm not sure yet, I haven't checked. I'm going to have to figure out more or less with the hull design too, because I think this saucer is a little bit bigger in diameter. But it also has these extra layers, so it would have more deckage and more decks and rooms and stuff. And I'll probably use the bridge. I'll probably be using the bridge and the hull as a kind of like a size template for the engines, possibly. Oh, what I did notice, and I'm a little bit confused about, not totally confused about, but a little bit confused about it did seem in the original series, the Dreadnoughts that I'm looking at, that I think the engines were a little bit, they were basically the same engine as the Enterprise, but I think they were a little bit bigger. I think they had a little bit more diameter. Not sure. I'll have to figure that out when I'm scaling it, but I'll get that figured out. But I need to get on to drawing this ship. And as you can see here, we have 2 phaser banks here. We have 6 around the top of the saucer, because this is still when phasers were basically rotating gyroscopic emitters. They did not have the strips yet. They didn't have They didn't have. So this ship would basically be more or less at the end of the original series, but before the refit, or possibly, because if you want to subscribe into the Phase 2, the Star Trek Phase 2, which I actually seen a pretty cool. I don't know if I snapped the picture of that. I think I did. Let's cross out of here and let's go into save pictures. No, it's in pictures. Yeah. Anyway, I shouldn't hunt for it too long because I was pretty sure I saved it. There, some of you might not be familiar with it. In the, I'll go back in here. If you look at this, picture I have behind here, let's go 7. Maybe yeah, okay. Be in 7 if we flip it around. If you look at this original picture, this is actually a pretty good PNG. I don't know who did this art. I thank them though if they're watching. This is really good art of the original. Oops, I don't want to move that around. I just wanted to. Yeah. Okay, if you look at this original Enterprise, this is the original, basically the original series, Constitution class, Enterprise from the side, and they had 2 different versions. You'd see the one mostly with this little ball in it, and I've seen it on blueprints. I've never really cared much for this ball on the end of the ship, and then when I had built models as a kid, they had this where you could put this on, and it didn't have the ball on it, and they had it with the ball on it. And it seemed to me that the ball wasn't quite stuck out as far as they have it stuck out. It was like a little bit less, but we're talking millimeters, so I guess nothing really to argue about. But in Phase 2, which is kind of an interesting storyline because it's fan made, it's not really canon yet unless they add it in there. They build on a. You can watch it on YouTube. In fact, type in like Phase 2 warp complications, and it shows you a good couple shots of that ship. It's pretty much the same ship, but they add on a torpedo launcher here, which is a lot like in the refit, but it's not exactly like the same one in the refit. But it looks like, that's where they're headed with that direction. The engines are basically the refit engines that they put on the normal Constitution class. Like they basically pulled the Enterprise in and put the refit engines on it. And they have a pylon. The pylon is real similar to the refit pylon, but it's a little bit different. It's like cut off in the back. It doesn't taper exactly like this. It's like they cut a little bit of this off. Because the pylons that I put on this thing here, I more or less kind of reversed the direction of the refit one because they're stubbier pylons. So, and that might not be set in concrete. I might end up taking this ship here, depending on whether Mr. Stewart likes it or not. He might like it, or he might want these engines lowered. He might not like the pylons. He might want the bigger ones. I just am trying to make this, like I said, as much as the original series. I wanted to almost take it look like they had got a hold of the Constitution class ship, pulled the dome in the neck, and got a hold of some of the engines, and more or less built a kind of like an aircraft carrier hangar bay. Now, one of the things I need to do here that I noticed in the design that I didn't really think too much of, get back there, is the way they had this drawn with this hull. They had it where you could land shuttles. The idea I think he had was that you land shuttles and you run them around actually it would be the port side of the ship, and you maintenance them in between here. You got maintenance bays and stuff, and you cycle them back around to the starboard side of the ship, and you actually launch them out the front, or you could land in the back, or you could have some like maybe you could have larger shuttles land in the back and take out of the back. But the problem I have is in the original series Star Trek, and even actually up into the Next Generation, with Voyager and Deep Space Nine and all of them, Star Trek has always more or less had these shuttle bays where they are compressed with air. They basically are compressed with normal atmosphere in here. And they get in the shuttles. Then they basically either suck the air back in the ship to make a vacuum, or they blow it out. I don't know how they make it. Anyway, they have a compressed shuttle bay with an atmosphere. You climb in the shuttle, you shut the shuttle, you eliminate the air one way or the other. You either suck it into the ship, which would make kind of sense, or they blow it out like submarine ballast, and they depressurize this. And then they open the doors, and then the shuttle flies out. Okay. Then they're done with that. They shut the doors back up, and then they repressurize the shuttle bay, or they could leave it deeper compressed until the shuttle comes back if it was going on a short-range mission or something like that. So on this design running all the way through, though, that means if you were to open any of these doors at all, any of these doors, if you had a full deck through design, you'd have to decompress this whole thing. You'd have to either suck the air back into the ship, and you'd have to decompress this whole bay, this whole deck level, to launch one shuttle or recover one shuttle. So I think it would be more feasible in the Star Trek way of doing things to actually, I think I'm going to segregate this. I'm going to make this into two separate bays, and we're going to put some walls in there with basically transfer doors. You can call them garage doors, but they'd be sealed doors, hatches, but they'd be big enough to push the shuttles through. So you could actually use these as three separate shuttle bays. These two, and then in the back. Now in the back, it could be a much larger one. But all of this area inside in the middle from the top, if you actually looking at it down through it, and I'm looking orthoscopic, not what they call perspective. If we did perspective, it looks kind of like longer. This is what it would look like maybe somewhat if you were landing a shuttle on the ship. You're bringing in your shuttle, you're coming in slow here, and you land. Boom. Okay, now. And what I'm trying to get at, and we need to go back to orthoscopic. See, that kind of changes the way it looks from perspective from orthoscopic. But this is quite a big hull. And once I get a scale shuttle in here, you'll see how big this is. I know I'm not really doing any drawing. I'm just more or less bullshitting. This is more of a catch-up session. If anybody's interested, if you're not, flip it off. Flip it off. Anyways, I get a scale shuttle in here, and because I do plan on putting a few of the things like the Enterprise had in it, like maybe a little side corridor and your little your little hangar control room, maybe the observation room up top and stuff like that. But I think I want to stick some walls in here with the, like I said again, make them where they'd be three separate shuttle bays, and then you could have your, if this was going to carry a lot of shuttles, which I think what the intent was, you could have more of the parking area up in the middle here. You could, they could still have it. I think it would be more actually advantageous if you basically use this tail end as you bring your shuttles in and land here, and do all your stuff up in the middle, and or have cargo elevators. You'd have your cargo elevators in the middle if you're carrying up cargo and stuff like that. And I could actually probably thin this thing out a little bit, which would give us more room in the center. I made it to give it tapers and stuff, but I could actually thin that out. That might be a concept. It would give you more room for the shuttles. But like I said, once we actually put a couple shuttles in here, and that might end up happening, because that might make the difference between being able to carry like 10 or 15 shuttles and being able to carry 30, just wiping this area out here, and I'll taper it even smaller kind of thing. I just basically put the rooms in there to be kind of like maintenance bays, but if you, like I said, if you basically put this wall in here to have these shuttle bays, then you could thin that out, or recede this behind it. This might not be fine, but like coming from the back, you might have to taper it down extremely, and then you would have a lot more deck room here. And then, like I said, but you wouldn't really see it anyway. You would have to figure out how big the main bay is going to be here, and then put in your transfer doors. But like I said, that would give you the ability to pressurize, depressurize this, and use it. But it wouldn't affect the center of the ship. Somebody's in here working on these shuttles. You wouldn't have to evacuate 100 crewmen. Hey, y'all run in the maintenance bays here, evacuate it, pressurize it, depressurize it, do your operation, and then repressurize. Okay, everybody can run back out and go back to work. If you had your almost like a dark room, you had your double door system, then that would be like, you'd still maybe have the warning that Shuttle Bay 3 is in operation, and have locking door mechanisms basically to where when the shuttle bay is being operated, it would lock it would lock up the corridor door. It would lock up the doors where anybody they couldn't come bebopping along and just walk open up a depressurized space and get sucked out kind of a thing, which I'm sure even in the original series they don't really discuss it at length. They kind of show that where they do the compression decompression thing. I think they actually did it. What's kind of funny to me, I think they actually did it from the panel that was right beside the shuttle bay. They had the rooms up in there, but they actually showed them walking up like in the hallway and hit the depressurization switch or the pressurization switch. Then they walked out to the shuttle and stuff like that. I think that kind of cracked me up that they wouldn't have basically a little crew or an ensign and a couple engineering guys that's their job, is that they're flight operations. But in the 60s in Star Trek, they made it where like Kirk or Spock or anybody, they just walk up and depressurize it, walk up and pressurize it, and stuff like that. And there was an episode of Deep Space Nine where people were trapping people in the airlock and had controls from the outside, to pressurize, depressurize it, which kind of cracked me up because, it was like a door switch on the side. There wasn't, like, no safeguards. Like, you'd think a computer could scan that somebody's in the damn thing and, just wouldn't let somebody murder it. They'd have to have serious command override or something like that, so. I guess maybe we could. Let's see, let's add an object. Let's go to full screen. Since we're sitting here dinking around, maybe I'll see if I can pop out this little sensor dish right quick. So I want to go to full screen, and let's add an object. Oops, I'm on object. I want to go to mesh, and oh, come on. Let's add a UV sphere. Okay. And I'll show you a little trick I learned. I think I've already showed this. I don't know if I described it, but I think I've showed it already. Okay, let's grab it to the. Are we on the x-axis? Let's bring it out here. Okay, I want to turn this into this, and then I'm going to put it down here. So first thing I want to do with this thing, oopsie, let's scale it down. And then to scale it, one of the things I learned, sometimes you're scaling, I'll show you. You hit the S to scale it, but it's scaling it from the 3D cursor. It's not scaling it from the object. So when it starts doing that, and I don't know what, it might have something to do with my settings, but I found an easy way around it is I come up to snap and then I go cursor to active. I think you can also do selection to crib. Now see, if you notice, I just moved that 3D cursor and it actually moved it in the middle of that thing. It didn't move it to the side like when I click on it, which sometimes you can get away with that. But so where are we at? We're on 1, I think. Okay, we're on 1. So let's scale this down. Scale it down. Okay, let's rotate it. And again, if this cursor was over here and you rotated it 90 degrees, it would put it like up here. So you want to rotate it into place. You want that 3D cursor on your object. So we'll hit R, and then we'll hit Y because I want to rotate it on the Y-axis, and we'll hit 90, and we got it perfectly 90 degrees 0. Okay. Now see, and then if you want to grab it, X. I'm going to bring it back closer to this thing. Now, one of the things we can do here is we can hit Z. And I'm in object mode. I'm not in edit mode. Because there's some things you can do in object mode that you don't have to go to edit mode. Okay, but that kind of gives me a good little look at this saucer out here. So I'm going to grab this. Another thing about that, see it being on a white background, that's kind of funny. And grab it to the Z, bring it up a little bit. And about there. Okay, now I might want to go to edit mode. Let's go to verts. Let's push A. And let's zoom in a little bit. Let's go. Let's see, let's make a box. And let's make another box because we got the whole thing here. Excuse me, let's grab it to the X. Gotta hate colds. Let's grab it, let's put it right on the edge. Okay, now another thing I can do here, again, go to edit mode, object mode, go Z. Okay, now I'm going to snap this again, object, I'm going to go snap to cursor to active. I want to bring that closer into the center of this. Let's go back to edit mode. Let's go Z so I can see through this. Okay. Let's scale to the Z. And it's closer. I could have actually put it more like in the... oh, bite me. God, I hate... I get this little bit of malware I need to get rid of. All these jokers with this. Oh, we're going to get the viruses off your computer. And they're the virus or the malware or whatever. Okay, so I got that kind of shaped how I want it. Now I want to scale. Scale. I want to scale on the x-axis. Which the problem with that, having that dot out there, see now you see it move, so I got to kind of guess. Like that, and then I need to grab it to the X. I can do it fairly well. If you're not kind of used to doing it, one of the things you might want to do is, like I said, you can bring the thing in. Okay, well, let's scale to the X some more. Let's keep skinnying this thing. And grab it to the X. That's pretty close. Yeah. And I can do one of two things here. I can, actually what I want to do first is I want to box this. And I want to delete the verts. Okay. Now one of the problems with this, which actually I shouldn't say problem, it's not really a problem. One of the issues that I have with this a little bit right now is I made this thing, but you see where it is it's too high because I'm modeling it on the one there. Now also, one of the other things I'm going to have an issue with a little bit is, you see the original one, and more or less it has a lip, it comes down, it has another lip, and it comes down, it has another lip, kind of thing, or ring. I noticed that on the model. So I'm either one going to add those in, or two, it already has some edges that I might extrude, kind of widen out. So I'll have to put rings in there somehow. And you remember I put inverse rings, more or less valley slots into this, which one of the things I kind of don't like in my model is that they're there, and excuse me, they're somewhat accurate, but at the same time, the illusion they kind of give is that it made like donut rings in there. It just didn't come out exactly how I want. I need to play around with it and see what I can do. Of course, by the time I texture it and model it, might not matter. It might fix it right up. And we'll cut this off here, and I will see you in the next video.